Of course it is.
All right, welcome to understanding and implementing the short-term camp NCAP classification. Before we get started, just a little housekeeping. Rich Hawkins is monitoring the chat, so if you have any questions along the way, throw them in the chat. If it's something that I need to hit right then and there, let me know. If not, we'll do a question and answer session at the end. There's probably 60 slides or so that we have to kind of cover tonight in order to get you a little understanding. At the end of tonight, we'll share the slide deck with your district executive and your district chairman, along with a National Camp Accreditation Program standards at a glance for this short-term camping program. And that'll show you all the standards that will be covered, that you'll need to cover for your events, as well as a full set of the national camp standards. So we have that all printed for your district executives. We'll share the slide deck via email. And before we get started, I'd just like to introduce our wonderful Scout executive, Mr. Mark Andreo.
Should I get in there?
Sure.
All right. Good evening, everybody, and hey, thanks for being on tonight. We have a couple of people here in the service center, but really more importantly, a great turnout of our volunteers. You know, the BSA has thrown us some curveballs along with COVID in you know, our recent history here. But this is one we could hit with the volunteers we have and the way you know, short-term camp administrators could really kind of quantify the high level of program that we're already offering is really cool. But again, it shouldn't be without saying thank you, because I know a lot of folks wear multiple hats, and that we want to make sure you know, we're providing the very best program for our youth. So I'll kind of hang in off camera here and learn along with everybody else. So we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
So thanks, boss. You want to share the screen, Rich?
Yeah.
Just go to the next slide. So the agenda for tonight: why short-term camp, what is short-term camp, the training requirements, NCAP standards overview, and the Q&A. So why short-term camp? It's to ensure the quality and of the program and the safety for all district and council organized overnight activities. Previously, no BSA standards other than the Guide to Safe Scouting applied to district council events, and they weren't considered resident camp or family camp. Only some weekend events were required to actually follow the NCAP.
Good.
Okay, so many of the liability claims that accident and sickness claims that we had resulted from council and district activities. A few recent ones you can see on the screen: adult leader collapses from chronic medical issues, and that happened to us right here at Patriots Bath Council last fall with a parent who actually had a heart attack on the way to the rifle range at Alamucci. Golf cart and utility vehicles are always a big accident point in the BSA, and they occur quite a bit on council and district events. You could see other things like shooting sports injuries, homemade zip line injuries, things like that. The definition of short-term camping, it's up on the screen, but it's any council organized overnight camping program, whether one time or continuing, that is 1, 2, or 3 nights in length, where the council or its agents provide staffing and program and may provide food service, and includes camps conducted off council property. National training courses are subject to short-term camping requirements regardless of the format of duration. Um, so how is it different from long-term camp? Well, long-term camp is any council-organized overnight program that is 4 or more nights. So our summer camp programs fall into the long-term camp, and they have 900 standards, where short-term camp only has to follow about 120 or so. There's a nice little chart to tell you how this works. So 1 to 3 nights, council-operated program, staff or food is a short-term camp. 1 to 3 nights, unit-operated, you follow the program materials and the guide to safe scouting. 4 or more nights, unit operated, you follow the guide to safe scouting and program materials. And if it's council operated program with staff and food, that's a long-term camp. So that's a pretty good flow chart in my mind of how you're going to divide this up. So this doesn't qualify for unit operated activities 1 to 3 nights. To put it simple, all council district coordinated overnights events that are 3 nights or less. This includes district camporees, council camporees, the Order of the Arrow, Weeblos family and Cub Scout family camps, training like NYLT and Wood Badge. This is the worst slide in the deck, so I'm not going to really read it, but when I share the slide deck with you, if you're really interested in the definitions here and the interpretations of this, this is the slide to go to. But it basically says what I just said in the past 2 or 3 slides. Short-term camping administrator, this is kind of the job description which was sent out for short-term camp administrator. You're going to have to attend a short-term camp administrator program, training program, which we will hold in-house here at Patriots Path sometime in January. We haven't set a date yet because we haven't received all of the information and approvals from National yet. And you're in luck because I will be the instructor for that. We'll bring in some other guest camp directors and stuff to help us out that day, so you don't have to put up with me the whole time. But if this position for you district chairman, you need to understand that you need to have somebody who's gonna do the job, follow through with the job, follow up with the job, and keep that position and that work moving, because this is all about health and safety. Short-term camp NCAP process. There's a pre-camp process. There's an on-site declaration. There's on-site documentation. There's post-camp. And then the council camping committee will do a NCAP review of all the district events, probably annually. The pre-camp side is could be a little bit cumbersome for everybody if you're going to a non-council camp or a public facility like Round Valley Reservoir or places like that. There's an NCAP appraisal form that you need to fill out before you even go. It's recommended that you visit the site with that appraisal form before you actually pay your deposit or make your reservation for that location, to make sure it meets the standards of the Boy Scouts of America. Short-term camping administrator fills out the local council authorization and declaration form with the council. It's signed by the scout executive or his approved designee, which will probably be me. And the camp is planned in accordance with the NCAP standards, including all the required paperwork. That's where it may start to get a little bit cumbersome, but we'll work with you on that. The appraisal form, we divided this up into a couple slides because it's really fine print. You need to fill out the site address, the site contact title, the site's website, phone number, and is it managed privately, BSA, federal, state, county, city, whatever. does the amenity includes, and this is where it says, does it meet the standard? So as you're visiting the site, you're going to have the standard book with you. Is the site clean and safe from hazards? That's pretty obvious. Is the site is not located near any natural or man-made hazards? Well, that can be cumbersome. Campsite areas are available for tents. Facilities are available for proper sanitary disposal and garbage. How many camporees have we helped where everybody had to bring their garbage home because the site didn't have proper garbage disposal? Drinking water from an approved source is available at convenient locations. So not only is it, you have water on site, potable water on site, but it's a water system that's certified and tested, and we have the testing reports from whatever location that is. EMS medical services are available within 30 minutes from the site. Is cell phone service available? Are fires permitted? Are there adequate areas for fires? Are there individual site hookups for electricity, water, and sewer to meet the appropriate local and state health codes? And that could be a challenge. I know a few years ago, Sussex District went up to Luscross Farms for a camporee, and there weren't those kind of amenities that were necessarily approved by state health codes. I think now that location is a little bit better now that it's part of the state park system. But at the time, it was a privately owned site, and really kind of did not meet the NCAP standards whatsoever. Each family site is located within 300 feet of a sanitary toilet facility. That may be a challenge. I think at Watchung Reservation, unless you're bringing in porta-johns for an event like we do for Cub Scout Day Camp, you're more than 300 feet from a toilet facility. Shelter available for program activities during inclement weather. Again, like at Luscroft Farms, there at the time there wasn't, but you know, the other example of Watchung Day Camp, we have those really nice pavilions there. So,
Keith, I'm going to give you a breath. Bill, I just saw you raise a hand. Would you like to chime in?
No, I was just trying to demonstrate for the people in the chat that were asking, could they raise a hand? I was just showing them how to do it. Sorry for the interrupt.
That's okay. It does work, everybody. We are still reading your questions as they come in. It's just hard to cut Keith off when he's on a run. Keith, the one question I saw pop up that I don't know if the slides have an answer for. Once a site is approved, is it good from then on, or do we need to fill out a program site approval form each time we go to that site?
So I believe that we're going to have to fill out a site approval form each time we go to that site if it's a non-BSA facility, because just like Luscroft Farms, it's changed hands, it's changed facilities, it's changed, and we need to know that before we actually book an event there and have an event there.
And the other question that I saw come up, where we have meets yes or no, the question is, if that's not checked, we can't use that site. Who is it that makes that determination?
Well, I think we're going to have to look at that when we review these forms as a team. So we'll meet with your with the short-term camp administrator, myself, probably the risk management committee. We'll look at that to see what's not checked and where we fail and how we can overcome that. If it's a location we really want to be at and we can afford to be at to meet the standards, then you know, we can make it happen. I think some of these locations we're going to look at it from a financial perspective and say, if I have to bring in 100 porta-johns at $85 for the weekend, that's going to break our budget. We're going to charge all these kids that much money for a weekend camporee or Klondike Derby. It's just not worth it to us. We're going to have to pick another venue.
Hamilton, I saw it was you who asked the question and raised a hand. Did you have any follow-ups on that?
Well, he sort of just answered it. I was gonna ask it if we can solve the no by improving the site by bringing in a dumpster, let's say, then that makes it yes, it meets standards at that point. Because
Yep.
that happened with one of our district camporees where we actually had to bring in a dumpster for the garbage. So then that site, I guess, would then now meet the NCAP standards because we paid for that device.
Absolutely. And when you fill out when we get into the standards themselves and it comes under garbage collection, we'll be able to just add the contract that we had to bring in the dumpster into that page. And, that standard is good. It's acceptable.
Keith, I have a slightly different question. If you could go back one slide. So, with regards to drinking from an approved water source, you said something about testing being required.
Sure.
I'm going to assume that if it's one of our camps like Alamucci or Winnebago, that's kept on file and we know by default that it's, a proper approved source. But if we're going to like Stokes or some other non-BSA site, do we know if they keep such things on file that we could just get our hands on them if we need them?
Depends on the location. Some places, yes. Watch on Reservation, for instance, again, they're on a city water line, so that's an approved water source, and that documentation is public accessible. So we'd be able to put that in the book as it's a public water supply, and here's all the information in the website, and that standard solved. I use the example of Lost Cross Farms, and they didn't have an approved water source. They had a well there that was never tested or anything like that. So you have no way of knowing if that water is actually good or if it's got fecal coliform, E. coli, anything in it. And so that's the nature of why that water system needs to be tested. Now, again, back to Hamilton's comment, if we wanted to, as a district, say, all right, well, let's call up Garden State Labs and we'll have them come up and take a water sample. And if it's good, we're good. We'll have a test report. Problem solved. It's an approved test point. It's been tested by an outside laboratory and the water's good. We're good. Again, that's an expense. For us, those range from $50 to $150 each time we get tested. So it's, it adds cost to your event that you're going to have to budget, which is why you sort of kind of need to visit that site and get some of that information before you actually book it and before you actually build your budget. I had to keep up with the slides. So there's optional ones, is swimming available? Do the facilities meet the county and state health codes? Are the recreational sites available for RVs? Group campsite areas are available. Clean and warm showers are available for all campers. Sufficient picnic tables are available. Permanent charcoal cooking stations, open area available for group games. Well-marked, easy to follow trails available. Playground equipment is available and in good repair. And in the state of New Jersey, that should be inspected by the state health department. So there's going to be little things in there that we're going to look at and have to kind of make some decisions. What I would recommend is when you do one of these site evaluations, is do the keep loose method of take pictures of everything, whether it's good, bad, ugly, or pretty. Because those pictures, we can put them in the standards book and it'll help us verify the condition of the property and all of that. So, and in that last section here, additional opportunities, list any interest historical sites that are inside or near the sites. If you were doing like the Jersey Jam, where we had the Waterloo Village historic site right there, and the Musconetcong River and the New Jersey or whatever trout thing that was. It was a pretty neat area, and we would have listed all of those kind of cool things on this. Because the goal here too, for us, is we want to keep these kind of site evaluations. We want to kind of look at these and share them with each district. So, if Watson Mountain goes to somewhere cool, maybe Raritan Valley would be interested in doing that in a year or two or months or something like that. So part of this is like a good data collection for us of cool places to go. We can add it to our where to go camping stuff.
We're resetting audio. Go ahead.
Okay. So there we go. So the on-site declaration assessment. On-site, the short-term camping administrator reviews the preparations, assesses the camp to ensure compliance as an assessment. The certified short-term camping administrator signs off on the assessment declaration portion of the local council authorization and declaration form. Boy, that's a mouthful. That's the kind of the day of visit to make sure everything's in place. They'll have the your standards book with all your documentation in it, but you're going to want to make sure that, let's say, Sussex District chose Deb Reedmiller to be their EMT for the weekend, and all of her certifications are in the binder. And Deb Reedmiller is not actually the one on site, it's somebody else. Well, we need to have all that documentation in place. So that's part of the assessment. If you're doing any kind of shooting sports or tomahawk throwing or things like that, we want to verify that the shooting sports director, National Camp School certified shooting sports director, is on site, and that he or she actually knows what's going on with what you're doing in the program. And what's documented in the book is actually what we're delivering to our scouts. So it's part of a quality control thing. We want to make sure that, but if my boss wasn't in the room, I'd tell you that the whole National Camp Accreditation Program is designed for us to go to the deposition. When we get sued for doing something, and it's inevitable that it happens, been there, done that, your national standards binder is the documentation you bring to the deposition, and this is the standard, this is how we met it, and the standards are designed with interpretation and everything else. And so the short-term, the assessment portion of this is verifying that, so that when we go to that deposition, we've done everything right and done everything we could do to operate safely, and our insurance company will cover us and our lawyers will cover us because we've done it right. Ties right in with on-site documentation. So I don't know, I can't remember the last time I've actually seen a district camporee have a first aid logbook for a district camporee. And maybe you do it and I just never seen it before. But you're going to need a first aid logbook. If that EMT treats somebody with a Band-Aid or a runny nose, it needs to be documented properly in a first aid logbook. And we'll have them available. Here we can print short-term camping logbooks right here in-house. Also that you have incident reports on site and you're filling them out properly and all that. That's documentation that's going to have to be turned in to the short-term camp administrator and to the council at the end of the event. So the local council authorization and assessment declaration form is submitted and filed with us. We approve that. All post-camp paperwork, again, like the first aid logbooks, the incident reports, anything else that we think is relevant, you know, if it's a permit to use that property that you got day of, we'll want to keep that paperwork with the file for the event, as well as, you know, there's been council and district events that have been ticketed by either the state park police or the forest fire service, and we'll need to keep track of that. So that's paperwork that you'll have to submit as well, because there might be fines associated with that, and we need to know about it and document it and keep track of it. So the council NCAP committee periodically reviews the short-term camp paperwork to see if there are any support, if any support or clarifications are needed. And again, that's going to be the role of the camping committee, is to once or twice a year sit down and kind of just go through each of your events and each of your standards books, look for any deviations, any issues, share that with the risk management committee, join them in on the conversation to make sure we're delivering a safe, quality program. I know I'm going fast, but I kind of feel like question and answer time is going to be a little bit longer. So I've gone through quite a good many slides already, and we want to talk about the national camp standards a little bit in detail now. So I'll slow down. They're divided up into SAs, PDs, PSs, SQs, HS, FA, AO, RP, and you can see them on the screen what they are. If you're coming to one of our camps, one of our Patriots Path Council camps, the FA series is already going to be filled out and in your book automatically. We'll have the water test stuff and the fire extinguisher test and the health department certificates and all of that already filled into the book for you, because these are the standards we live by. The program design and program specific ones and the staff qualification ones, those are going to be on you guys. Because if you're running the program, who's running the program? That's your staffing. And how are they trained? And does that meet the standard? What is the program? Is it age appropriate? Is it, does it follow the aims and methods of scouting and all of that? And so that program design series kind of focuses on each individual program and how it's done. So if you're, again, doing tomahawk throwing or knots and lashings and all that, how are you doing that? And is it following the guidelines? The one that's always fun for me is the RP standards, the recommended practices. I get real excited about those because you know, some of them are a little bit tougher to meet. And so that's always been my challenge. I've always looked at the national standards as like the minimum basic skills test. Like when I was a kid, that was the standardized testing. You know, we used to do that with a number 2 pencil and a Scantron. I don't even know what that is. But the recommended process or practices kind of make you reach out a little bit farther, make you a little bit better, make you deliver a better program for those scouts, and those scouts deserve it. So those are the ones I like the best. Now we'll go through each kind of series a little bit in depth. The SA standards kind of define the types of camps, how councils locally authorized short-term camps, explain who leads the assessment process, clarifies what the authorization, assessment, waiver, variance, paperwork is required. I will tell you that now that the BSA is not self-insured, it is next to impossible to get a waiver or a variance for a national standard. They want you to meet the national standard. Years ago, you used to be able to say, well, I don't have somebody who can go to camp school for shooting sports, but I have an NRA person. Now you need to send somebody to camp school. Things like that. Years ago, we had an aquatics director who was 20, the standard says 21, and we got a waiver for a 20-year-old to run the waterfront because they had all this experience. That they won't give you that. They won't even talk to you about it. They'll hang up the phone on you. It needs to be a 21-year-old. They need to be Nationally Camp School certified, all of that. So the waiver and variance process, it says it in the standards on how to go about it, but they've become few and far between. So when we're looking at short-term camp, we're looking to do it the right way. We're not looking to say, well, let's get a waiver on that because we know Johnny Smith can do it well. We can't do it. Program design standards, like I was saying before, they ensure that BSA programs are well designed and by type. Cub Scouts and all, Scouts, BSA, Venturing, Sea Scouting, PD 111 and 112 kind of define that a little bit. And you'll see that in the standards book that we give out. And we'll talk a lot more about that in the training.
Programs.
Hmm?
New programs.
So PD 111 and 112 deal with new programs and programs that we don't typically do, but we want to try to experiment on. And there's a whole process for that. There's paperwork involved and doing all that. When we did the ATV program, it was, I built a binder of how to go about the process. And the binder was probably about that big, just with paperwork that we had to define the whole entire program and how it met the Sweet 16 of safety and all of that stuff. So as you get into new and adventurous type programs, and you want to try something new, we'll have to work together on that. I'll be glad to join in with your district team and help you through that and bring in some of my team to assist us in making sure we can make it happen. The PS program specifics, they align with the Guide to Safe Scouting used in conjunction with the SQ standards, aquatic shooting sports, cope climbing, trek, wheeled sports. Those standards go in deep depth to them. They give you the explanation and how they're applied and the applicability of them. But they're really deep. I know the COPE standards alone are like mind-boggling. Takes a lot of time to review that stuff. So if you're thinking about doing any kind of COPE activity at a district event, again, you're better off coming to one of our camps to do that because we already meet the standards. We already understand the standards. We're staffed for that. If you want to take a COPE program off and say there's a ropes course at some other location that you're going to, that ropes course needs to meet the BSA standards. That staff needs to meet the BSA standards. The whole 9 yards for COPE and climbing. So if you're adding that to a district event, those places need to meet our standards. They may exceed them, but our standards are pretty strict. The wheeled sports, like I love that. I used to call it that when we first started the ATV program, the wheeled sports area. That's mountain biking, that's motocross, that's ATVs. Those have pretty specific standards to meet too. And we've done the ATV program at some district camporees that have been held at Mount Alamucci Scout Reservation. And again, we've had to meet the specific standard for that. And in the case of the ATV program, it's literally like specifically worded that you cannot deviate from the ATV Safety Institute program. You cannot deviate at all. If you do that, you violate the standard, you're not protected. And that's an area where somebody can get hurt in the blink of an eye. So again, even when you're looking at program specific standards, they're about the safety of our scouts. The SQ series staff qualifications. And by the way, if you look up on the slide where it says 400 series, so if you're looking for specific staff qualifications when you're looking in the standards book, you're looking for in the page 400 range. And that'll get you to the SQ series, just like the last slide was in the 200 series. The SQ series requires training for by program and position type. Many of these are not at change, aquatics and shooting sports, the health officer requirement. So specifically for district events, a health officer should be taking the National Health Officer Training course. So a 1 hour course online, it helps you fill out the first aid logbook. It gives you some in-depth insight onto what you're going to face when you have a couple hundred scouts in the field, doing an activity. It's a little different than maybe what the EMTs are trained for. The first aid's the same, but the way you handle things is maybe a little different. Aquatics and shooting sports, I mentioned both of them need to be nationally camp school certified. What was 401?
All camp staff are registered members.
Yeah, so 401 is all camp staff are registered members of the Boy Scouts of America. So if you're bringing in somebody, a friend of yours who's going to do blacksmithing, we need to get them registered. They need to take youth protection. There's another standard later on we'll get to where if you're bringing in a contractor, but so the 400 series deals with all the staff qualifications for that. That's usually the one where Kurt and I spend, we lay awake until about 3 in the morning in his office trying to get the book together with everybody's certification for summer camp. And at Sabatis, I literally pull my hair out. I have a lot of it to pull out, trying to get all the Voyager certifications for the truck program. It's can be cumbersome when you hire 300 people. So when you're looking at a district event, you're going to want to look at your staff early on and figure out who's doing what and what qualifications you're going to need to make that happen. The 500 series health and safety. A big difference between long-term camp and the short-term camp is going to be the med form and the screening process. So with short-term camping, the med forms that are collected with the unit will be kept with the unit. Where at summer camp and long-term camp, we collect the med forms and hold on to them. Medical screening will be different too, because the unit leaders will have a more active role in that than the health officer does at summer camp. But again, you're going to need some written policies, and this is where coming to one of our camps will definitely make it easier for you to hold an event. We have all the written policies in place for this kind of stuff, and they'll be automatically put into your standards binder. So what we're going to do with that is when we put together a standards binder for each district, we're going to put together binders for Mount Alamucci Scout Reservation, Winnebago Scout Reservation, and we're going to put a binder together for Watchung Reservation. All the paperwork that we use for our summer camp programs and the national standards for that evaluation will be put into that book. That book is then complete other than your program standards and your SQ standards. So you'll have to add in your staffing, you'll have to add in the different types of programs and fill that in. What we'll do is we will print the standards book in yellow. We'll take out the yellow sheets of the standards that we're going to comply with and change them onto a white piece of paper. So when you get that standards book for, say, an event you're going to hold at Mount Alamucci Scout Reservation, you're going to be looking through that book to make sure you meet all the requirements of the yellow pieces of paper. And we'll go through that at the training that we do. And I'll actually give out those books at that training when we finally get that date set. For the facility standards, camp property standards always apply to accredited camp properties. It's no change for us. So if you're going to an accredited scout camp, the facilities are checked like that. So again, if you use one of our camps, in the book will have your fire extinguisher certifications, your health department certifications, your water tests, all that stuff will already be in the book for you. If you're going outside of us, then that's where you're going to have to make sure that facility meets the FA criteria. I like to use the example of toilet seats. It's like one toilet seat for every 15 campers. You know, do we meet that at Watchung Reservation without bringing in porta-johns? No, we don't. Not on a district event. And most of you probably do bring in porta-johns. I know I bring in porta-johns for Cub Scout Day Camp, thank God. So those are kind of the facility standards that, are gonna impact where you're gonna hold your event. Because if you can't meet these standards for the facilities, then it's probably not safe. And it's probably not gonna be a really good program. Not all the facilities standards apply, because there's a lot more in the 700 series than the 13, 16 of them that apply to short-term camping. But we'll go through that again at the training, and you'll see that when we share some of this paperwork with you. Be sure the NCAP site appraisal form has a resource to ensure that your chosen location meets the location needs and standards required. So that's pretty much what I elaborated on a little bit there. Administrative, the AO series 800, that's a lot of paperwork. One of the big things that I find with our district events is when we get to emergency procedures. I had the opportunity to look at some of them this year because of COVID. Never really looked at district events before from national camp standards perspective. A lot of them do not meet the national standard. And so, again, at the training that we do, we'll provide you with some samples. And again, those are some of the things that'll be in the book for the three campsites, Alamuchi, Winnebago, and Watchung Reservation. Emergency procedures is a big deal, and it's a big deal with the state health department as well. They want to know that, and they read through them pretty carefully on a state health inspection. I wonder what form's available no later than 10/15. I don't know what that parentheses note means. I stole that whole page from National, so I have to look into that. I'm sure things are changing paperwork-wise and paperwork requirements. So they were probably letting us know that some of this paperwork would be available on 10/15.
2021 revisions.
Yep, okay, so it's the 2021 revisions to the national standards were issued on 10/15, which included all of the short-term camping stuff. And again, the administration, the AO series, the 800 series, they connect with the SA standards of applicability series. So that was the very first series that we started with. So they're kind of linked together, tied together. Like I mentioned, I love the recommended practices, and here's the best part for you. They're not required for you. That not all could even apply to short-term camp. But again, for me, it's kind of fun to look at the recommended practices and try to improve our program, because it's all about delivering the best quality program for our scouts. Before we go into the Q&A, I was really serious about the deposition part. I kidded with, well, Mark was here and Mark left, but he's probably listening. The whole standards setup, when you read through the standards, it was written by a bunch of lawyers, and I know there's probably a few of you in the room. I don't hate you as bad as you think I do, but it's really comforting to go to a deposition with a book like this, where the lawyers have a hard time trying to make you stumble through a deposition when everything is documented right and you're doing the right thing. So again, it's protecting ourselves, it's protecting our scouts, and it's all about delivering a safe, quality program for our scouts. So with that, we got any questions?
We do. To get us kicked off, we had a couple of questions specifically about med forms. Let me scroll up through the chat here. The first was regarding whether or not the med forms will need to be reviewed by the health officer. Does the admin need to see all med forms?
Negative. They're going to be held by the unit leaders. So you can, during your assessment, maybe spot check, but that's going to fall under the unit leader's responsibility to make sure that they have all that documentation in place. Just like you would for a unit camp out.
The other one that we got regarding med forms, does this mean that we are going to be required to have parts A and B of the med form for every scout anytime there is an overnighter now? If we don't, the scout must be turned away.
You should have always had a part A and B for every scout going on an overnight camping trip. It's in the Guide to Safe Scouting. So yeah, you're going to need.
Even a day event, they should have a med form.
Yeah.
Right, but I guess my question is, does the district now need it? Like, for example, if this was a Cubelos, are we going to need to go from unit to unit, making sure that every unit has every med form for every scout in order to meet this new this standard?
So at check-in, you might want to just say you guys got all your med forms, and they show you a binder or they show you a big envelope, and you say, okay, we checked, they have them.
So I will,
If they look at you cross-eyed and say, what's that? Then you might want to start getting some blank med forms out and getting some paperwork done. I would put it in your requirements for the event that and in your pre-camp paperwork that med forms will be required.
historically, Raritan Valley had required multiple copies. So you'd leave a copy with the people running the event, and then you'd have one in your unit. Now, I don't know if I need to confirm that that's still happening, but that made sure that we always had medical forms available if something happened to a scout when they were not with their unit.
You know, I'm getting pretty heavy in my old age, and so I'm a big belt and suspenders kind of guy, and I love that idea of the 2 copies. Again, it's about protecting our scouts and protecting us.
Keith,
Just getting back to the units at the end of the weekend.
Go ahead, Glenn.
Keith, with the Black River District, we used to ask for 2 copies also. We kept a copy of it and we gave it to the person that was in charge of the first aid, the health officer, and it was in a sealed envelope. And the only time that we opened it was if there was a problem with that unit.
Yep.
From Jack, is there a link to all of this on the national website? Yes. If you search Google for NCAP, NCAP 2021, the full set of standards, not just the short-term camp standards, but all of the standards are publicly available. As you look through that file, it is a large PDF. They have it sorted already so that you can quickly see which ones apply to a short-term camp or not. The majority of them don't. There are well over 400 standards in the book. Less than 100 are actually required to run a short-term camp. I think the exact count is 94, and some of them are recommended, so they're not even required. Thank you, Bill. Bill just dropped it in chat. From Tom, the national course runs about 10 hours. It runs all day Saturday or over 4 weeknights. Any sense on how we would plan to run it in-house?
I'd like to do it on a Saturday. I'd like to start early in the morning, like 7:30, meeting either here at the Council Service Center or, depending on where everybody's coming from, maybe closer to you. Start off early in the morning, go through, have lunch, and finish up the afternoon. I've talked to some counterparts across the country who have said, they've done the class for their council in 8 hours because they made it more council specific. The one thing is that I'm mandated to follow the syllabus. So whatever the syllabus is, when I actually get it from national, I'll be able to judge that more. But I'm thinking we would do just one long day, either a Saturday or a Sunday, and get it done. And we'll try to find a location that's convenient for everybody if it's not the council service center.
I see a raised hand down there, Hamilton. What do you got for us?
Well, James was actually before me, but
Uh-oh.
the just a kind of a related question. So does this only apply to fixed camps? What I'm asking, as opposed to like you're camping in one location, you're going to a camp, you're going to a location and camping, versus let's say an actual Sabatis trek or some other trek where you're actually moving locations every night. So you're actually hiking and camping. And because clearly, like if you're camping at some remote site, you're not going to be meeting the toilet and the potable water requirements. You're going to have to be, that follow that list. So like where do you draw the line at having to apply these standards? Is it only for if you're going to a fixed location or if you're hiking?
So if you're doing a council or district event that involves like some type of trek over the weekend. So we're gonna do the Raritan Valley Appalachian Trail hike from the Delaware Water Gap to High Point.
Yes, 219 through 221.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, PS, the trek standards are in here. So there's trek program, trek planning, camp outpost activities, transportation standards, trek planning, trek programs and equipment, adventure programs and activity standards. There are standards that are going to apply to that. You may put not applicable for toilets, but you're certainly going to have to check off the box that says that size group hiking along the trail is meeting the tread lightly, leave no trace kind of standards.
So I guess then what was important that I missed was that this is only applying to district and council events, not like troop or small crew events that you
Yeah,
might.
again,
Okay.
maybe you can go back to that slide.
Oh, nice.
I came in late, so I may have missed
Gotcha.
something.
Yep. We'll put up the slide here.
Yep, another one.
There's a slide that we showed earlier, Hamilton. He just put it up there. And that slide kind of defines what is a short-term camp and when you need a short-term camp administrator.
I don't see anything sharing, but maybe it's not on here.
Yeah,
It's coming, it's coming. That one.
Yes, I came in after the slide.
That's okay.
So
Jim, I
that-
know you had your hand up.
That being said, if our district is having a day event, nobody's sleeping over anywhere, we don't need to worry about any of this?
That is correct. If it's a day activity. So like your Klondike Derbies this early winter where we're not camping out, we don't have to necessarily worry about the national camp standards. We do still have to worry about health and safety, and we should probably start getting a good handle on this and maybe do a practice round for your Klondike. But if it's a one-day event, you're not sleeping over, then it's a day activity, not a overnight camp.
And because it's a day activity, we do not have to go through filling out some massive book?
Correct.
Okay.
Bob and Dave, I see your questions in chat, but Jim has been very patient with the hand up. What's up, Jim?
So Keith, on Sabatis, are you gonna have a book on Sabatis too? So in case they do like a cleanup day over there that they stay overnight because it's far away, or what?
We're going to have to work on that together. We'll have to deal with some state health department regulations in order to make that all happen. So that's going to be kind of a hybrid for us. And we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But yeah, we'll work together to build that and meet all the standards.
All right. From Bob, would it be worthwhile for the council camping committee to create our own checklist of what needs to be reviewed for each event? We'll just hold up that checklist. So Bob, National put one together for us. They've done this for every set of standards that if you have a Trek program, you can find a Trek national standard checklist. And again, this is what we were basing the standards off of that we looked at tonight. So it's already out there. It has already been distributed to your district executives. And whenever we start an event planning, it's going to be a big part of planning the event if it involves overnight. From Dave, what are the rules on providing food at these events?
Whew.
Oh boy.
Depends on what state. First of all, like in the state of New Jersey, you'll need to be have a safe serve food protection manager. And you'll need to have staff trained by that person. You'll need to follow you'll need to have hot and cold charts. You'll need to store food properly, practice safe food handling. Your menu should be reviewed by a dietitian and be approved by a dietitian. A refrigeration space, you're going to need to verify that you have hot water. How are you doing dishes? And is it a chemical sanitizer? Is it a hot water sanitizer? You're going to need a temperature chart for all that. Refrigeration space, again, do you have adequate space for food storage? Is it rodent free? All of those kind of things.
601, 602, 603.
Yeah, so there's 3 standards for that. Yeah, so menu planning, a licensed dietitian to review it. Reasonable efforts to reduce sugar and fat and provide whole grains and adequate fiber. And I'm gonna have McDonald's for dinner. If the camp operates kitchen, dining hall, commissary, trading post, where it prepares and serves food, the camp meets all applicable federal, state, and local food storage, handling, preparation, service, and facility standards, and must have the required licenses. So, if you're going to one of our camps, our kitchens are already licensed through the health department. We're going to have to file your safe serve food protection manager with the county health department or the local health department in the case of Winnebago. You're going to need to make sure that we meet the health code as you're operating that facility. You're going to need to make sure the refrigeration's on for proper food storage and handling. Yeah, there's all of that good stuff. I'm not saying anybody's doing it wrong out there with food service, but food service gets kind of ridiculous. The camp that does not serve food in the dining hall shall have sufficient guidance. So if you're providing food like in a Trek program, Camps Without Dining Hall, you need to provide sufficient guidance to participants on food storage preparation, garbage disposal provisions, and things like that. And then there's a whole section for Trek programs and outpost camps as well for food. So there's 3 standards there. They're in the FA series, 601 through 603. And you'll see that when we distribute these books to your district team.
Dave, the easy way to think of it, it's the things that our camps already do. At Alamucci, at Winnebago, at Sabatis, our camps have already been complying with these standards. What we want to ensure is if you go somewhere else, that the scouts receive the same level of service.
Okay, so
So
can I safely assume that if I'm going to a Boy Scout camp, not necessarily ours, that I can expect the same thing?
Can you safely assume that? No, that's why we have that's why we have the camp administrator. Because he has to make sure that it is. You can't just assume.
Keith, I guess the question I was just asked, you and I don't know who else was on the call before there, but said it's the council or district led. You guys already have it. So if it's outside of council, it's the administrator's job to make sure this is done, correct?
Correct.
Right. So, okay.
Okay, but if you're talking about a Boy Scout camp that runs summer camp, obviously it's impossible for them to run summer camp without the appropriate certifications, isn't it?
No.
And you mean in another state, right? Sorry, I just want to make sure, another state, Dave, like if you go somewhere and there's a Boy Scout camp, you attend it, you're asking those questions, is it like council does, right?
Yeah. I mean, aren't all councils under the same set of rules?
They're under the same set of rules. It depends on whether they were accredited or not. It depends on whether they got a conditional. It depends on who the assessment team was. There's a lot of what ifs. But again, as a short-term camp administrator and you're going to go to Northeast Pennsylvania Council's camp, you're going to need to get all the documentation to meet all these standards to put in your event book. Okay. And that'll prove to your assessment person, your camp administrator, that everything meets the standard. And then we take that book and we have that book for the deposition.
Okay. The other question I had is this concept of approval by a licensed dietitian. Is that something that council has, or is that something that we're going to have to go out and hire somebody to do?
That's something that I can help you with. Fortunately, Patriots Path has a great relationship with Wakefern Foods and the ShopRite Corporation, and all of these fancy new ShopRites all have a dietitian there. And so we make a couple phone calls and we bring our menus there and we hand her a camp t-shirt and she looks at the menu, makes a couple suggestions. Usually while she's doing that, I'm eating grapes or an apple or something that she has on her desk. It's a really enjoyable experience. I'd love to bring you with me.
So Keith, does this actually end up killing volunteers providing food to the district event? So I know our Cub family team has talked about, like, we've used the Winnebago dining facilities, but I know for their day event, they actually ended up serving their own, and they talked about potentially doing that going forward, even when they're camping. So that's basically nixed now without jumping through a lot of hoops to get their menu approved for the lunch that they would provide on Saturday.
Yeah, that would, I'm not going to say it's going to kill it or nix it. I know there's quite a few opportunities to take the Safe Serve food handlers course and the Safe Serve food managers course. And we've actually offered that a couple times within the council. So there'll be opportunities available for that, for our volunteers to, get some new training. As far as the menu goes, again, we're here to help. Every district executive is like 10 feet away from my office, and I'm actually in the office at least once a week because I have to be, not by choice. I'd rather be at camp. But, they can reach out to me, they can grab me, and I can help them solve that problem for the district as far as getting that menu approved. Because of some of the training that our staff has, and in New York State, for instance, Lori qualifies as the dietitian according to the state health department because of the training course she took with the state health department. So we meet that standard up there by our own staff reviewing it.
Does everyone need to have the safe serve training, or just one person who oversees everything?
In the state of New Jersey, one person needs to be the safe serve food protection manager. At our camps, we can provide somebody to oversee your staff and train your staff to do that. Pretty easy. So we can overcome that obstacle pretty well. And I think, you know, in terms of the districts, I look at this whole thing as an awesome opportunity. I mean, that site assessment form right off the bat, I'm looking forward to reading them and seeing what the different locations have, just for future things and future reference. But sharing EMTs, you know, so maybe, I hate to throw her in under the bus, but maybe Deb Reedmiller helps out with Watchung Mountain, and oh gosh, what's his name? Helps out for Sussex. So they switch off and they work together, and both of their standards are, both of their certifications are in both books, and we work together like that to do kind of a team effort and work as a council. And maybe Dave is Safe Serve Food Protection Manager and can help out with you know, Raritan Valley situation on a weekend and so on. So
Yeah.
we can work that out.
Okay, I got another question too, with respect to a couple of things. First, do we go through the same process? Because at the 3-district camporee, I'm the staff cook, and no food is provided to any of the participants. Does that fall under all these rules? Similar to where at the Klondike, I'm serving dinner for everybody.
So my immediate gut reaction to that is, you know, if the entire staff gets sick, and they all of their wives sue the Boy Scouts because they got sick on this camping trip, and you weren't following the national standards, would our insurance company cover us? Probably not. So my immediate reaction is, yeah, you need to follow the standards. If we're providing food for anybody there, participants, staff, whatever, then we follow the food service standards.
Okay, so in environments like that where, I mean, it's starting to sound like my role as the staff cook under these new regulations at the 3-district camporee will be impossible to do.
No, not if you have the right certifications. You should be able to do it just fine. You're just
Okay, but I know under the safe serve rules, I got to be cooking in a kitchen that has hot and cold running water.
Okay.
That ain't a happening thing.
Well, then we're kind of opening ourselves up to liability there, and I wouldn't recommend doing that. So in that case, you're right. You're going to have to figure out how to do hot and cold running water.
Well, must it be running, or can it be I've boiled water and I now have hot water that I can use?
No, under the safe serve rules, I'm required to have, I think it's 2 or 3 hand washing stations with hot and cold running water available.
Dave, we gotta move on here. I got a couple
Okay.
of questions in chat. There are a lot of specifics that the set of rules that we have, these NCAP standards, they give us the framework to answer all of these questions on a case-by-case basis. It's very difficult for us to have overarching responses right now for whether or not you can continue. We want you to be a part of this. We need to have volunteers active in these events. They can't run without you. We just want to assist you in providing the best event possible. From Judy, we've got, what if a day Cub camporee ended at 5, but allowed the packs to reserve campsites on their own for the night. Do we still need to fill out the paperwork?
Yeah, so I was on a webinar with National for this, and that question came up specifically. And if you notice, I put the smirk on my face because that's the same thing Brian Gray did from National. And yeah, that's cheap. A Scout is trustworthy. It's an overnight thing. It's part of a district and council event. You know, they're booking the campsite, they're doing it, they're part of that event all day, they're staying overnight. It falls under these standards.
Karen and Bob, I see you guys. Hang on just a second. We're back with more great NCAP information. From Jack, what kind of time frame should we plan on in advance for this kind of a certification and planning process?
Well, I've already started putting together standards books for the summer of 2021 now. Because, you know, you got to tie in the staff and tie in the licensing and tie in all the permits and tie in all of that into that operation. I would say your first step is going to be that site assessment. You're going to want to do that site assessment before you actually have finalized that location. From that point on, you know, you finalize that location, you start building the book. So if you start planning the event 6 months in advance, then you build the book over the next 6 months, and you're ready to go. You kind of do the process as you're planning the event. So like in the case of Fishwhack District, Gary Giampino and Gary Trubig are going to be doing tomahawk and knife throwing. Okay, well, we need their certifications for the book. Okay, good. And then this guy's doing scoutcraft. Okay, we need his qualifications for the book. And we're doing this, and they're cooking, and this is that. And as you're planning the event and getting your staff in place, you're just keep adding to the book until all the yellow pages disappear to white pages. Takes me a year. But that's summer camp, and that's a lot more. I think 6 months is probably good.
Keith, I assume this is the case, but so you said it's a visit. Someone has to go visit. So if there's someone wants to plan something in Pennsylvania, out in Erie, this camp administrator rather has to go do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, you
but as a district, though, Rob, it's a district thing. So it has to be your district's going to Pennsylvania, not if your troop's going.
No, right. But if you're the short-term camp administrator, you're part of that. So the person that takes that role has to plan. There's going to be times throughout the year they're going somewhere.
Yeah.
Could be 8 hours away, 20 hours away, right? So that's what I'm getting at.
Yep, and in the same token, it's an opportunity for the program planning people, the district event planners and whatnot, to take that trip with the assessment person and really get a good feel for the site and start planning the program and start mapping it out and doing all that on site and start checking the boxes right away for the standards. Yep, this meets the standard. Oh, we could do that here. Oh, this would be a perfect place for archery. It's perfect natural setting for it. So, you know, it promotes a team effort. It's not just that site assessment or NCAP camp administrator going there by himself and saying, it's all right, it works. Okay, and get back in the car.
Yeah, no, you can gather some of the stuff, as you said, that you need to do the planning part while you're there and have that at least a head start. So,
I see we've got a couple of hands up. Looks like first is Karen, Troop 17. What have you got for us, Karen?
So technically it was Bob first. So Bob, I'll defer, seeing as though your hand was up first, or I'll just go. You tell me.
Go ahead, Karen, I'll wait.
So just curious, I've got my OA hat on my head. How's that going to work with the OA?
Well, I think fortunately for the Order of the Arrow, you know, when you look at the program standards, you know, you're not doing shooting sports on an ordeal weekend. You're not doing scoutcraft on an ordeal weekend. You're not doing ATVs on an ordeal weekend, and all of that. So a lot of the program standards are going to be NA. On the facility side, you're doing most of your events at a council camp, so the facility standards are already going to be checked. I think the biggest thing for the lodge is going to be the health and safety standards, with documenting your emergency procedures and documenting your health screening and your med forms, and on the staff side, documenting who your health officer is. And then making sure that you're operating that program according to what the Order of the Arrow standards are for program and the BSA standards.
So I was thinking cooking was my biggie. I mean, we always assign a person to be cooking for that weekend, and I'm thinking they too are going to have to go through these, you know, cooking standards.
Yep, and you know, we've had to do that a long time ago, Karen. So I know Jerry and Don Beach both took the Safe Serve course to meet the health department standards, and we also have you know, assisted the lodge with providing one of our, you know, food service professionals to you know, oversee the kitchen operation while they were getting that training, and do some training with them and managing it. So it's not a huge obstacle for the lodge at all.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Bob, you're next. I've got your question in chat, and Keith can't see it, so I'm going to read it to him.
That's actually a different question. So if I can ask the question I had earlier.
Sure.
So it sounds like when it's our camp, we're going to know what requirements the camp fulfills, and the camp will already have copies of whatever we need for our event binder, right? Is that a safe to say?
Yes.
Okay. So my question is, if this is a standard that's now being expected by all councils for all camps, if we are using camps outside of Patriots Path, you know, Akanikin or whatever, right? Theoretically, shouldn't those camps also have the same paperwork handy because it's being required at every camp?
You're going to have to ask for it, and you're going to have to verify, you know, that you have it, and you're going to have to put that paperwork in your book for your event.
Okay.
Keith, I'm just wondering what Bob just said though. Is it back to what Dave said earlier, meaning that it's accredited, right? That whole thing with the accreditation is the key, no?
Yeah, but even if you're going to an accredited camp, your event needs to have the
paperwork.
documentation to meet the standard. Because we're not going to drag them into the same deposition room that we're going to.
So
By
Bob,
the
I
same
want to
token, you can't point the finger at them and say, well, they're accredited camp, we're not responsible, because you're still going to be carrying the ball on this one.
Exactly.
All right,
If we
Bob,
want
I
our
want
money,
to
they're going to give us
back to your
the
second
copy.
question. Give me just a second here. We're going to bounce over to Bob's question in chat. I'm a little surprised that BSA is expecting volunteers to assume this level of responsibility or liability as opposed to the paid staff. If one of us signs our name to these forms and something is wrong, does that open the volunteer to any kind of exposure personally?
Well, as long as you're signing off that, to the best of your ability and the best of your knowledge that the standards met, then you're covered by the BSA. If you're going to sign off on something that doesn't meet the standard, then you're jeopardizing all of us, me included. As far as the NCAP program, that's been administered by volunteers since it first started back in, I don't know when it started, probably 1960s or 50s. The camp assessment teams for long-term camp have been volunteers from the area or volunteers from the region that visit each camp in their area and do the assessment and sign off on it. It's been a volunteer-led program from the beginning.
From Judy, what if PACs make their own food at their site during the camporee? Do they need to follow the NCAP guidelines?
Say that again?
So Judy, correct me if I'm wrong here. If you're having a camporee, but the dining hall is not providing food, if the units are individually responsible for their own meals in their campsites.
Correct.
Okay. Do they still have to follow the NCAP guidelines?
For food and self-serve and whatever, you need to do to have food at this district activity.
If the event is not providing food,
got it.
Then no, you don't have to.
Good. Sounds good. Thank you.
At that point,
hold on. Let me clarify that. So if the event provides lunch, one meal, does that mean then that every PAC then has to follow NCAP guidelines for all the other meals that weekend?
No. The
Okay.
meal that you're providing or the meals that you're providing or the food that you're providing needs to meet the NCAP standard. If a unit's providing their own food for meals or, for the whole weekend or just dinner, then they're following the Guide to Safe Scouting and all the recommended national practices for a unit.
Thank you.
all right. From Hamilton, Keith, you keep using the word deposition. Has it happened a lot, or do you expect frequent ones?
So I've been teaching National Camp School for, I guess about 15 or 16 years. And every time I teach a class of camp directors, whether there's new camp directors, there's recerts, I hear at least 2 horror stories a year of a deposition because they weren't following the national standard. Some of them had to do with staff members on their time off doing shenanigans with Coleman fuel and being burnt and being in the hospital and worse. And, some of it deals with camp getting shut down because everybody got food poisoning. And when they analyzed it, it came right from some bad practices in the dining hall. Other camps have been closed down and been sued and been in trouble because the water system wasn't tested. And they actually had rodents that when they turned the water system on and put all the caps back on, the rodents were stuck in the pipes. And, so now your drinking water is contaminated. So yeah, there's been depositions, there's been lawsuits, and that is the sole reason for having standards like this. And, when you read these things, it's literally written like a lawyer would ask the questions at the deposition.
All right, so that catches us up to the questions in chat. Bob, you still have a hand up. Did you have a second follow-up question?
Sorry, is that Rob or Bob? There's a lot of Bobs on this call and there's one Rob, so sorry, which one?
Bob P.
Okay.
Bob.
No, I think my hand was up from earlier. I mean, I was just going back through the chat myself.
Okay.
I did have a question earlier. Like I was thinking in terms of a couple of those, going back to all those different standards, Keith, you had that one, that the one slide that had program standards. Does that mean that, like, if we're putting on a couple of those, we have to run the program past the council camping committee now in advance in order to make sure it meets the standards? Or I was a little fuzzy there.
Okay, no, so you don't have to run it by anybody. You know, you're going to want to do your program design based on the Cub Scout program and based on the age, stages and ages charts and stuff like that. So you want to make sure you have something for tigers and lions and bears. Oh my, and weeblos. You want to plan your program the way we're supposed to be planning our program and the way we're supposed to be running our units and running our events. And so this is just verifying that when you get to do the assessment that day, that you're actually having programs for lions and programs for tigers and programs for bears. Oh my. And it's that we're not asking you to bring it to anybody else for approval. We're asking you to follow the scouting program.
All right.
Keith, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Just going along that line a little bit. You mentioned before that if we have a volunteer program person like a blacksmith, we have to register them in scouting. We have to pay for them to join scouting and get a youth protection to run that program. And then you mentioned something about a contractor is different.
Excuse me. The Rona's got me. So they do have to have youth protection. Paid contractors. So the people that you bring in to run your portable climbing wall, there's specific guidelines for that. And you're going to want to have their contract in your book. You're going to want to have them take the youth protection training. They don't have to be registered as a contractor.
What about like a storyteller or a singer or any?
So like that program, the Drums at Alamucci, those guys?
Absolutely.
Okay. So you're going to want to, at the bare minimum, have them take the youth protection training.
Okay.
You're going to want to encourage everybody to register, but I know that's going to be a little bit.
People aren't going to want to join the Boy Scouts just to play our gig, you know.
Right.
But the youth protection, I think, is a valid and doable.
Yeah. And the other thing you can do is we can write a contract to them, so then they become contractors. I'm going to say contract staff, but contractors. So we write a contract, and we have a standard like volunteer contractor form that we could do. And then they take the youth protection, they're under contract, so we have all that information, and they don't have to be registered. So there is something like that too.
Okay. Cool, thanks.
And while we're waiting on Jeff to get back in the call, Bill, you had a hand up next. What have you got for us, Bill?
Thank you. My comment pertained to the previous question that was raised about I'm surprised that BSA would have volunteers sign off on this kind of a document, potentially exposing themselves to litigation. First, I'm not an attorney. There's attorneys on the call, so I'm not telling anybody anything. You know, they can comment. But my interpretation of this, you can be sued anytime. And if you're holding the event, you're subject to litigation. Signing something that says, I'm trying to follow these policies and I'm doing my best, you know, to try to follow policies to help provide us, to me, sounds like it's nothing but trying to establish safety more than exposure.
Yep,
That'd be
you're
my
doing the right
interpretation,
thing.
but
Hey, Bill, that was what I was going to ask earlier. Didn't have a question, but back to the deposition. So, Keith, I think when I first joined, I heard you started talking about that piece, but let me just make sure I understood it. If we, a camp administrator, goes somewhere, does the assessment, we're giving that to council. You guys attend a deposition. My name doesn't get drug into the deposition. It just says, I may have it on a paper I may have signed saying, I sign off saying whatever, but you guys attend the deposition. But as Bill said, doesn't mean no one can come and say, well, I want that Rob Shepherd guy. He's part of this. I'm suing him. That's
Correct.
just part of life. Anybody can sue you for any damn thing they want.
Exactly.
Okay.
So our council attorney, our scout executive, probably myself, probably the council president will be sitting there in our suits. I'll actually shave. And we'll hand over the standards book early on in the discovery. They'll say that we followed all the standards. Then our insurance company will get involved, and the insurance company will sit at the table and handle it because we followed the national standards that the insurance company approved that as our guidelines, and that's why they insured us, because we have these guidelines. So you're not going to get dragged into the deposition as the assessment team. I'm going to get dragged in just because of my title, because it happened when somebody was camping and I'm camping director.
Hey,
But,
Keith,
yeah.
as one of those angry lawyers on the phone,
Yeah.
I hate to contradict you, but I don't think we can ever say that we're not going to get deposed, because lawyers can depose anyone who has factual information. Now, whether we're going to be held individually liable is a whole different story. And I think your statement that if you're following the standards, the scout insurance is going to cover you, and by having these forms and filling them out is only going to go to prove that. So it's helpful. But the idea that you can't be dragged in for a deposition or named in a lawsuit, that can happen to all of us now.
Yeah, Bob, and I'm sorry, I think when I was saying earlier, I agree. I'm just saying that Keith said they would represent us. We give them the paperwork. Again, they could say, I still want him to come because he's the assessment, right? And then ask me to come. But in general, it's Keith, it's the council executives, the lawyer, that kind of stuff. So I just want to make sure I was clear when I was saying that. But I agree. Anybody can tell me I have to go. I mean, it's what part of it is if you're doing it, right? So.
Jeff, I know you've got your hand up for a while. You're next on my chat here, but we had a real quick one. Keith, I'm going to hold you to a one-sentence answer. Does the short-term camp administrator have to be present at the event with the book?
The short-term camp administrator does not have to be present for the entire event. The on-site assessment has to happen at the event. So you could come in the morning, do your assessment, and go on your merry way.
All right. That was your one sentence. Jeff, you've been waiting patiently. You even had to drop the call for a second. What have you got for us, sir?
Yeah, and let me know if I sound like crap, because my Wi-Fi is pretty odd. But my question was, and it might add some context to the last answer that Keith gave. Now, if, for example, if the short-term camp administrator cannot be there for the day of the event, are we allowed as a district to have a second person or even third person trained to stand in for the short-term camp administrator?
Sure.
So it doesn't have to all fall on one person's shoulders is what I'm asking. Okay, perfect. That answers my question.
All right. Al, I see you've got a hand up, but Jim has been on and off with that hand all evening, and I can see it's wearing thin on him. Jim, what have you got for us?
Keith, I have a question. On the Weebles event, when we do the foil cooking, do we need a safe person for that?
We're providing the food. We might not be cooking it, but we're providing the food. So I think it answers the question. Right?
I think that's gonna, That's a question that we're gonna have to ask one of our health inspector type people on and let them give us guidance. They're probably gonna tell us no, that we don't need to have that. But I think we'll have to take that as an individual case, Jim.
Okay.
All right, Al, I see you got your hand up too. What's up, Al?
Well, Keith, you may have partially answered this a minute ago when you said the short-term camp administrator does not have to stay for the whole event. My question was, the conversation tonight sounds very much as if the short-term camp administrator is the lead volunteer for the activity, but not necessarily, right? They could be the person who is compiling the book, who is putting all this together to support the district activities committee, and someone else is actually the chairperson for the Copalos or the Boy Scout camporee, correct?
Correct. I look at the short-term camp administrator as the check valve. So your activities committee is planning the event. Your short-term camp administrator says, okay, who's doing that? Whatever activity it is. And let's go with tomahawk and knife throwing. Who's doing that? Okay, well, it's Gary and Gary. Okay, let's look and see, do Gary and Gary have the proper certs? What certs are required? And they go through the standards and they come back to you and say, who's your shooting sports director? And now the activities committee says, oh, we need to get a national shooting sports committee or national shooting sports camp school director on board. So then they have to search out and find one of them. And so then they find one of them and they give that certification to the camp assessor. And then they find out you're doing backwoods engineering or pioneering or something like that. And they look through the standards to see what's required for Scoutcraft. And they say, okay, what's the training level of, Jim Dennis for Scoutcraft? And Jim provides his documentation and it meets the standard and the assessor's happy. He doesn't necessarily have to plan the event. You're the check valve. You're making sure that we're doing everything according to the standard. And it might be just somebody who's coming to a couple of meetings, or it's somebody who's getting a bunch of emails back and forth, and just making sure you have everything in place. And quite frankly, they don't even have to compile the book. Somebody else on the committee could compile the book and just share the information with the camp administrator. So it doesn't necessarily have to be overwhelming. It certainly would be wonderful if it was a team effort, and the assessment, the camp administrator was an active part of the team. But it's a team effort.
I think we are actually up to date on questions in chat, and I don't see anybody with a hand up. If you guys have questions, oh, there's one. There we go. Bob, can we clarify a little on how much of the certification process has to be done prior to the event and how much may be done at the event? Because it sounds like there are factors involved that could mean the event shouldn't occur.
Correct. So a lot of the pre-work of building the book and reviewing the documentation for the event, it has to be done, leading up to the event, within the 6 months leading up to the event. And it needs to be ongoing because, it might not be that you're not going to hold the event. It might mean that you're not going to do that activity at that event because you don't have the staff, the qualified staff, and you can't get the qualified staff. So it's something that it's an ongoing process.
You and your tappy foot. It's picking up on the mic. All right. Now is the time to ask people any questions you have.
Dave.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah. Question I had, you keep talking in terms of the administrator for the district. Is it possible to have every event have someone trained to function as the administrator for that event as opposed to one person necessarily doing every event, where we have one person trained to function as a supervisor and then have administrators associated with every event that are part of their current set of volunteers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I budgeted for the training to have about 12 people trained. But honestly, we could train as many people as want to take the course. So, you know, if you want to build a committee of that, that would be wonderful. I'm sure there'll be members of the camping committee that are going to be taking the training as well, just for fun, because camping people are weird like that. And, you know, so we can all kind of pitch in with each other.
I see a hand, Judy.
All right. I just needed a little clarification in regard to when we have, let's say, someone doing a lizard show and they're doing 3 during the day at a camporee during the day. Do they need to take YPT? Because I was a little unsure, because you called it volunteer before doing some event, but this is somebody we're paying, and I know you did mention contract and putting their contract in the book. Are you saying this contractor that we're paying money to, who's going to be there for a certain amount of period of time, needs to take that YPT training, that hour-and-a-half YPT training, before they can come to our event or work our event?
Short answer is PD 109 addresses that, standard PD 109. If the council uses public or private outside non-BSA providers for program, the council has a written agreement with each provider that outlines the responsibilities of both parties. Goes on to elaborate a little bit that if they have unsupervised contact with camp participants, the camp must either conduct criminal background checks for such personnel or obtain written certification from the vendors that such personnel has had a criminal background check. Yes, good news is, according to this, I don't really tell. They have to meet in or exceed the requirements outlined in the Guide to Safe Scouting. They need to provide insurance that meets our insurance requirements. Present a program that's keeping within the BSA standards. Yeah.
So that sounds like they don't need YPT then. They need to have all the other stuff. But the interesting thing is, right, when we have these events, even a troop event, we have parents that are registered usually, or people that are YPT. You have to have at least 2, no?
Exactly, and I just read that.
So it should be good.
We should try to encourage them to take youth protection. However, we can provide one of our volunteers to accompany them to ensure the maintenance of youth protection policies. So it is written in the interpretation on that.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we do now. I mean, you have to, right? Always
Yeah.
2 registered, 21 and older. So I'm thinking, Judy, that would cover if you have someone going off with the scout. No, yeah, you shouldn't be doing that. It has to be someone going with that person, so there's not one-on-one kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Right, and usually there isn't one-on-one in these shows, which in front of a group. But if you
Right.
say we need to, make sure we shadow that person and that they are not alone on the. I just wanted to know: do we have to require them for YPT? If making sure they're never alone with and that we kind of track them while they're there, and that they are never alone with a youth. Which the youth shouldn't be alone in the first place, but that's another story. But okay, thank you. So we will be able, so if I had to give an example, like at Sabatis, did you ever get the balloon operator to take YPT? Or the other The plane, the float plane, did they take YPT?
So we do have a certificate for YPT for Tom Helms, the float plane, and the balloon operator is the camp director. So yeah, he's.
Oh, okay. Well,
But it's a good point because the Whitewater Rafting Company, they did not take the YPT because they meet the criminal background check stuff and the contract stuff, and we have staff member go with them who maintains the YPT.
And Keith, sorry, you just said that I want to make sure you just said, so if they have the other stuff anyway, it's not an or, I'm sorry, it's not an and, it's or they are background checked or whatever, right? So in other words, I don't know they use the word or, but my point is if it says they had a background check, right, it still covers what Judy's saying. They don't have to have necessary YPT.
Right. We need to provide somebody with the group for YPT. So,
Correct.
you know.
Thank you.
It looks like Tom Keys has an observation on state parks. You still with us, Tom?
I am. I just wanted to comment that if you're planning on having an event at a state park, you may actually have to run a parallel type of plan for the park people. When we ran Jersey Jam, we were required to submit a very detailed operating plan to the state parks folks. And a lot of these types of issues are covered in that plan. And you will be working not just with the state parks folks, but you'll be working with the Department of Community Affairs, which is like a very Byzantine, unbelievable organization. It can be a very frustrating process. So I would check right up front with the parks folks and see what their requirements are of you and leave yourself plenty of time to deal with that. Just a heads up on that.
Absolutely. I see another hand up. Jim, what have you got?
So Keith, you're talking about people that vendors that come in, like a lizard people or whatever, and anyone comes in with animals. They have standards and they have the insurance because they have to go to schools, and school standards are almost the same as the BSA too. So most of the people had the insurance and the background checks. They have to get them for school. So that's one thing you can look at too. Because we have high standards in that.
Okay.
How are we doing on time, Keith?
8:20. Did good.
We're doing all right.
So we'll get back to you once we firm up a date range. We'll get back with the district chairman and the DE's field staff to establish a good date for the training. Just again, waiting on national to provide us the authorization to do it locally and the paperwork to do it, and whatever other stuff they're going to require from me. We've applied for that and we've paid the fee to do this. So it's just a matter of waiting for them to let us know when we're allowed to. We can do as many trainings as you want, and we can do it kind of any way you want. So if you want to do and the COVID restrictions loosen up and we want to do something in the spring before camporee season at camp and do an overnight of it and do part of it on Saturday and part of it on Sunday, or we want to do it at the council office on a couple of weeknights. However you want to do it, I'm open to suggestions, and I'm happy to facilitate it to make it convenient for you. So we'll have further discussion on that once we get all the information from National. Rich will be transmitting the PowerPoint to you, to the district chairman and the DEs. Probably won't get to that until Tuesday. Till Tuesday, we're both off for the rest of the week. But we'll get this information out to you, and feel free to email me with any questions you have. If I can't answer them right away, I'll reach out to the folks down at National to answer any questions I can't answer for you.
Hey, Keith, sorry, go ahead.
Must this training be physically in person, or could part of it be via Zoom? And
I believe it can be in Zoom. Part of it can be in Zoom, so it doesn't necessarily have to be in person. And again, that's an option that we can play with as we move forward with this and see how the COVID restrictions and all that happen.
Hey, Keith, sorry, I just wanted to ask one last thing. It was in reference to earlier when they said about, I think it was Jeff's question about a committee. My question is this, are you looking for one short-term camp administrator? And then if there's this committee that we just mentioned, or Jeff was asking, having more than one person or someone covering. So what are you looking for? And so is there going to be one responsible person and they would have these people under them necessarily to say, we split it up if we can't go to a place? I just want to make sure I understood what Jeff was saying earlier. And what is your goal? One, and then have, again, people that would help.
So it's going to be more of a district type setup. And, you know, each district's going to need at least one for their district activities. The district may decide that, you know, and the district has the resources to send a few people, and that would be wonderful because then you have a team. But it's going to be more up to your district how much resources they have to invest in this and how it's going to work out for them. We're going to kind of leave that up to each district to kind of make it fit for themselves, and then we'll help that group every way we can.
Okay.
I don't want to dictate how each district is going to do it.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Hamilton, if I can get around to it, I'm going to try and put the recording for tonight's meeting on the council's YouTube page with a private link so that it will not be publicly viewable. And we'll make sure that the district executives and the district chairman have that link to send out to you. And if you would like to share that with your unit, you can.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
If that's all you got, that's all I got.
Good
I
night,
talked long
folks.
enough. And so thank you very much for coming, and we'll be in touch shortly. And if I don't see you before Thanksgiving, have a great Thanksgiving. It's my favorite holiday.